Thank you, Jim. So my friend and mentor, Bob Buford, mom passed away tragically in a hotel fire. And he took the reins of their cable TV company when he was probably ill-prepared and young, but very aggressive. And he spent the next 20 years growing it at a 25% compound rate of return. And his administrative assistant came in one day, shut the door, and sat down across from him and said, "You're scaring me." And like you just looked up, he did too. And he took his notepad out and he said, tell me everything on your heart. And she said, she was 10 or 12 years older than him and probably a bit wiser. And she said, "I'm watching you chasing this growth at all cost. And I'm afraid that you're in the process of trading priceless things for really, really valuable things. And that's a bad deal." And so he went away and recruited a head of strategy for IBM to spend some days with he and Linda to take their life all apart, put it back together again. At the end of that time, as a wise coach, this gentleman sort of created a single sheet of paper with a box in the middle and said, "I'm listening to you, Bob, over these last few days, and you're in a conundrum. You need to put one of two things in this box. Your life is either, you have to determine what is going to be the primary loyalty of your life." And this particular gentleman was not a Jesus follower, but he was just a wise person. And he said, it's going to either be Jesus or money. And that's an interesting conundrum to find yourself in, right? Because you can't serve both of those. And so he decided his life primary loyalty was going to be Jesus. And then he went about, how do I do that? And like a wise person, he sought out a mentor, and his mentor was Peter Drucker. So he spent day or half a day with Drucker 2 or 3 times a year in his 3-bedroom bungalow out in San Clemente, California. And thankfully, he recorded all those conversations. I've had the opportunity to read through much of that over the years. But one of the things that was so helpful to Bob was Peter Drucker sent him a long letter, a one-page letter, but filled with wisdom, in January of 1989. And, Drucker typed stuff on a typewriter. I have a copy of a Wall Street Journal article that he typed on a typewriter, typed it out once, took a pen, made a few adjustments, went out to the front post office, put it in an envelope with licked the label, stuck it on it, and sent it to the Wall Street Journal. And that was his article. So this is his letter to Bob. And I want to read some of it to you. And this is some of what he said. But every one of us, as we're looking for our destiny, as we're looking for our calling, we need to make eye contact with the Lord, but we also need older, wiser people to speak into our lives, to tell us really who we are by what they see. And so here's Drucker talking to Bob. So Drucker was, 65 or 70 maybe at the time. Bob was in his 40s. And he said, "Bob, you're very unique because few action-oriented people devote so much time to thought. And that's what you're doing this weekend." He said, "The reason that you're important, Bob, and the reason what you're working on, the halftime stuff was happening or starting, is not that you have money. The reason is that you've thought through an entrepreneurial role. You're a pioneer. You're establishing something terribly important, and that is a new form of entrepreneurship that is focused on the contribution of the individual and not solely on the contribution of money. So furnish an example. Say, this is what I do, not this is what you should do. And you're already a wonderful example of that. You see the responsibility to use freedom, to use your own life creatively and productively. The individual's responsibility is to make a contribution. What is important is that you have another 30 years of life ahead of you. in doing this in your 40s. You're a pioneer. You are an innovator. Interestingly, I realized after Bob passed away that he died almost exactly 30 years later. And this is why, like we were hearing earlier, investing early in your life is a really wise idea because your kingdom impact compounds over time. And so Bob set out to get clear on his mission as an entrepreneur of his whole life, bringing his talent, his influence, his network, and his resources and his creativity. His core contribution as an entrepreneur was to see gaps in the market, to see opportunities like Halftime, for example, or like what he was doing with innovative church movements like the multi-site church movement, and then to be willing to start without all the answers and to risk capital. Those were his core contributions. And if you had a conversation with Bob, it was an ADD conversation. He went all over the place, and yet that was his core genius. And I'm a very linear mind. So if I could tolerate the craziness of his conversation, I could pick up the thread on it and turn it into a process that we could use and we could replicate all over the world, right? So the stuff that when I came to Singapore 13 years ago and every year thereafter, we brought that same process, and you guys have improved it. And Shanghai, I saw a picture of 30 people graduating from Halftime in Shanghai using the same process, but building on the creative vision for entrepreneurship that Bob was given by Drucker. And then Drucker said to him, you need to turn that into a T-shirt. You need to distill your mission or your purpose into something that's clear and memorable, that will guide your decisions every day. Your mission statement or your purpose in life is designed to be a utility tool. You pull it out every day and you use it to help you avoid taking on responsibilities that don't fit you. It's a way to say no to 90% of the opportunities that come your way so that you have the freedom to say yes to the really big ones and to ruthlessly eliminate the clutter and the hurry from the rest of our lives. And so Bob distilled his mission down to simply 100X. And it was not necessarily his whole mission. His longer mission was to transform the latent energy of American Christianity into active energy. And yet he distilled it down in his mind. He wanted to be the soil that produced 100-fold. Now, I love studying the story of the soils as an investor, a real estate developer. And when you read them, there are only 4 things we're told to do. Obviously, we don't want to be the soil that's the shallow, hard soil that never germinates. We don't want to be the soil that gets entangled by the things of this world. We don't want to be the soil that's captivated by the deceitfulness of riches. But otherwise, we're told to do this, to cultivate a noble and good heart. And that's what we've been doing, right, our whole lives. Hear the word, hear my word. So how in my life am I listening deeply to the Lord? What are the rituals and the rhythms to get away for a silent day with the Lord or for time each morning to listen to him? I take 3 separate silent days each year just to listen to the Lord. I've done that for 23 years. I have all the notes in one file, and when I look back, I can't imagine how I would have done those years without taking silent days away with the Lord to just listen to him. And then we're told to take in what he says and put it into action, even if it's costly and risky. And then lastly, persist, is to persevere, and it will produce compounding return on life over time. And if we don't persist, we leave the biggest return on life on the table because we quit or we went to Leisureville or something. It's like in my business, the retirement home business, the last 5 or 10% of occupancy is pure profit. And when you discover your calling and you live it over time, it compounds so highly, it will literally bring you to your knees. After 28 years of walking with people on this journey from success to significance and seeing them transform lives and their influence on other people, at this point, I get stories literally every day of compounding return on life that literally brings you to your knees. And I would encourage all of us to invest deep, invest early, and count on the Lord If I cultivate a noble and good heart, if I regularly hear his guidance to me, if I have the courage to take it in and put it into action, even when it costs me dearly, and if I'll surround myself with things that help me stay in the game, when it's so easy when we're affluent to drift into Leisureville. And so I want to unpack how we could drift into Leisureville. But before we do, here's what I've been learning more recently, and I've just highlighted a bit of it. If I had to distill what I've learned over 23,000 hours of coaching CEO-type leaders on the journey to discover and live out their calling, if I had to distill it into a billboard that you could read in 3 seconds driving by, this is what I would put on there. Focus plus leverage plus persistence equals 100x compound return on life. And the most amazing thing is the way it compounds. But let's just walk through those briefly. The focus part is to get incredibly clear on your purpose so that you can use it as a utility tool. Your mission statement should have 3 things in it. It should describe what you're best at, or what you bring, what you care the most about, and the difference you most want to make in the world. If you think about it, in the Bible, there are examples of of people who lived great lives with a purpose statement. John 1:6 says, there was a man sent from God. His name was John. Now, if you stop there, think about this. If the next edition of the Bible came out and there was a verse about you, and right after John 1:6, John 1:7 said there was a man sent from God, and it was you, and your name was in there. That's a blowaway. That you were sent into this world on purpose, just like John was. And it goes on to say, he came as a witness. In other words, he should focus on doing witness stuff because he came as a witness. He should be able to say no to a lot of non-witnessing things. And then it goes on to say why he was sent, so that through him all might believe. That's the KPIs. That's the metrics for his life. What does that statement look like for me? Well, I'm a thought leader. If you look at my strengths on Strength Finder, strategist, futurist, activator, belief, and focus. Strategist, I have the ability to think about how to get from here to there. Futurist, I'm captivated by what could be. That's why I love sitting down and listening to your story. What could be? How could God use all these ingredients in some remarkable way around your passion? And then activator is let's go. And a lot of people just need a little bit of a boost. Hey, let's get started. Once they get clear on the mission statement, there's a certain trepidation to start. Well, I'm pretty good at getting things going. It's just my natural strengths. So I'm a thought leader. And my passion, for whatever reason, is helping high-capacity marketplace leaders make a kingdom impact. So that's my mission statement, to be a thought leader, mobilizing high-capacity marketplace leaders to make a kingdom impact. The power of focus is it distills down into filter questions. If you had a mission statement like mine, here are my 3 filter questions. Number 1, is this a high-capacity leader? Number 2, do they lack clarity? You don't need a thought leader if you have complete clarity. I want to applaud you. I want to be a wind at your back, but you don't need my help. And then 3rd, do you want to make a kingdom impact, or do you just want to live a slightly more fulfilling life? I just don't have time to help you if you just want to live a more fulfilling life, because I want to be the soil that's producing 100-fold. So I'm looking for people who have a deep desire. They're high capacity. They lack clarity, but they would walk on glass to find God's call and live it out. Do you see how that declutters my life? So that I can focus on one person at a time or one group at a time without ever thinking. In fact, it makes it so easy for me to say goodbye to managing my business. And I've paid my partner 5% of gross revenue since 1993 because I have this deep sense of calling. There was a French poet once that wrote, when you discover your destiny, if you don't follow it, it follows you like an accusing shadow. So what is that one thing that's following you that you can't outrun? So here's some quick stories of what this looks like in some of the lives of guys I've coached. So over here, Pat with the blue shirt on. Pat Hamill's a home builder, sold his home building business to Warren Buffett and stayed on as the CEO. He's a great builder. He's got a deep faith. He loves the Lord, loves building great homes and caring for customers. He likes lifetime customers. They buy their starter home. They buy their next home. He wants them to stick with him. Always buy an Oakwood home for life. But he also loves training and equipping young people to get a living wage job in construction that might not otherwise do that. They may come out of prison, they may have addiction problems, and they may not want to go to college, but you can get a great job, a living wage job in construction, and it's a big need in his industry. So he created a corner of one of his factories or warehouses, and he takes 700 or 800 people through that program every year in Denver. And then he's replicated it. Now, there's one, Drew Brees opened one in New Orleans. There are about 8 of them. We opened one in Charlotte recently. And as you can see, if you do that in enough places, 20 places, pretty soon, you'd be touching thousands of people every year. But then, to be even more contagious, here he is with a room full of his peers, other CEOs, teaching them how to find their unique calling and get in the game and produce a multiplying impact. You can see how he could be the soil over years he was he spoke at his alma mater, University of Denver, last graduation last May, and he said to them, after he gave them a talk about the joy of generosity and how it fills your life with so much more joy than just getting, he said, when you come up, you're going to get 2 things in an envelope. You're going to get you're going to get a letter from the chancellor and me, and you're going to get $500 in cash. Every kid graduating. And he said, now here's what I want you to do. If you really need this $500 more than anybody else you know, please keep it as a gift from me to you. And I just pray that you are blessed with it. But if you know somebody else that needs this more, could you just do me a favor? Give it to them in a way that's meaningful and gracious to them, and then send me a little note about what you did and how it made you feel. Maybe some of you will get together and group your money. You'll do something really cool with that. Can you imagine $500, every single kid graduating from a major university like that? Well, not only did those kids get affected with the joy of generosity, but that went all over the news, right? And you can see how you get to 100x, and he's going to stick with that year after year and persist. This is Dan Devine, who built a Knowledge Compass group and sold it to Pearson's, and his mom went blind late in life, and he was talking to her as he was coming through this journey with me, and she said, well, honey, I think you should take an interest in people like me who've lost their sight, who sit at home with no productive work and don't have a community of friendships. You're an entrepreneur. Come up with something. Come on, get with the program, son. And so he created this lighthouse, Stelio, in Orlando, and now they have 550 site-employed employees. And he's going to replicate it around, and that's just one deal he's working on. And so you can see how you take your unique abilities and a prompting from the Spirit of God, like if your mom tells you to do something, basically do it. And look at this lady here. I mean, think about it. He said the most joyful day of his year is the Christmas party, where you have all these people at a party in a community where they belong. And they're useful, and they're making a contribution. And the thing is cash flow positive. So just think about the multiplier on that. So this last one was really touching to me, and that is I've been coaching this guy, Robert Preston. He's building a portfolio of outdoor resorts. And he's infusing the gospel and marriage enrichment into outdoor resorts. You got an RV or you got a mini house. These really high-end resorts are amazing nowadays. I don't know if you've ever seen them. And he's basically bringing Young Life to those people who may never go to Young Life. And so as he's building this out, he was a fighter pilot. He's a big, tall, kind of a handsome guy. I said, you need to really spend time talking to your wife about her passions, because you've had way too much fun all along. You got this cool business going. It's a ministry at the same time. And she's got 3 kids at home and homeschooling, it's time for us to turn this all around and just listen to what she'd like to do. And she has a heart for kids that are on death's door that need a home, a foster home, that they could be loved and cared for. So they called with this little boy who was 4 pounds. His mom was a crack cocaine addict, and they didn't know if he would survive. But so he got the family together, and he told me this just recently. And he said, now here's the deal. Your mom is already exhausted just trying to keep up with everything that we've got going here. If we're going to take this little boy in, we all have to show up. And this little guy in the middle who's feeding his new little friend said, Dad, there's no more important work we could do. Now think about what this journey does in the legacy of your kids. Look at this guy. He's learning what compassion looks and feels like. And his mom is resting. And he sent me this text. This is the joy I get of serving these kind of people. He said, Lloyd, this is priceless. Thank you for guiding me along the way. I've been teaching him how to trade valuable things for priceless things and never trade priceless things for valuable things. So I want to talk about the paradox of prosperity. Bob Buford wrote the book Finishing Well. It's 66 stories of, and by the way, how much time do we have left? Oh, good. Thanks. Wrote the book Finishing Well, 66 stories, and while it was in manuscript form, he sent it to a friend of ours to read, and his friend wrote 5 pages of notes and sent them back. And Bob took the 5 pages of notes to the ranch for the weekend, read them over, wrote all kinds of comments in the margin, and sent me a PDF version. I read it, so this was 2006. I read it, and I said to myself, this is so packed full of wisdom, I'm committed to doing these. And then I said to myself, and I'm going to make a note to call him back in 15 years and ask this guy how it went. So I did. Last summer, I called him back. And I sent him his letter, his 5 pages, 2 weeks before. And when I got on Zoom with him, he was looking at it. He looked up from his desk and he said to me, I haven't looked at this in years, but I didn't do it. I didn't do it. And I said, well, gosh, I'm so sorry. Now he's 80. I said, well, you know, God's the God of the second chance and the third chance and the do-over, right? So, but let's come back to that later and figure out how we get from here to there. But could you take me through the story so I can learn what happened? And what happened was he had a big exit and his life got complex. He had 100 and some K1s and he had 3 homes. And what he told me he didn't realize is, he's, you know, got Aspen, Cabo, and his hometown. He didn't realize his friends, his closest friends, they had 3 homes too. And so pretty soon he was disconnected from his friends because they're never in the same place at the same time. And then he got disconnected from his church. And then his life added, he had country club memberships, and then he had cars and planes and toys and things. When you add even a second home to your life, it adds incredible complexity. And your relationships get complex because maybe you've had multiple businesses and you have investors and you have, you know, just think about all the complexity around. Everywhere he looked in his life was complex. He had never built a strategy of what Drucker called planned abandonment. Regularly decluttering your life. And then the second thing that snuck up on it that's co-joined with it is comfort. That, okay, now you got all this complexity. Like somebody's got to take care of these houses because that's just a pain in the neck. And now we got to fly private because we're trying to get between here and there. Next thing you know, and my kids call me all the time on this kind of stuff. So I'm not pointing any fingers, but they're like, Dad, you got this classic car. You park way off in the middle of nowhere so nobody will ding your doors. Isn't that nice? It just does. It happens to you, right? And not only that, but you're afraid to take a risk on something. You don't want to risk your reputation because it's pretty comfortable. I've already done the whole thing. I built a business. We grew the halftime ministry, and then the third thing that caught up with him was complacency rather. And that is, you just little by little, he was building affordable housing in his hometown at one point, and the city made it harder and harder for to get stuff approved and get land permitted for affordable housing. And he said, look, stew in your own juice. I'm trying to help you. I'm willing to put my money in. And so look at these things. These converge. Now, here's the thing. You know Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's sidekick, that partner, and he had this inversion strategy to investing. He learned it when he was in World War II. He was a meteorologist, and his primary job was to make sure the pilots could take off and land safely on aircraft carriers. And when he first started, he didn't feel like he was well-trained, he didn't know what the factors were, and he came up with this ingenious idea to invert the problem. What would I do if I wanted to kill as many pilots as I possibly could? And he landed on two things. Get them in a place where their wings ice up and they lose elevation and end up in the drink, or put them in a spot where they don't have enough visibility to land safely, but they don't have enough fuel to get back to shore. And so he just didn't do that, and he became great at it. And so now he uses that inversion. He said, always invert. You think about, like, you like Costco, if you don't want Costco to go broke, then ask yourself, what could you do if you wanted Costco to go bankrupt? What would you do? So I've asked myself this question, and I want to share it with you. If I were a few inches taller, I could see over this podium. So here's my one-pager on me, because I could easily squander the rest of my life. So this is my inversion. I want to squander my entire second half, so that 100 years from now, I am deeply disappointed that the things I invested my time and money into are all but gone. I want to experience the regret that the things I could have done or given to would have not only lasted, but compounded 100 times in blessing others and in joy to me in this very moment. Now, if I wanted to do that, and there's a significant risk that I could do just that, here's some things I would do. I would let this trail of relationships, when you've had the privilege of serving thousands of people all over the world, like I have had the privilege to do, there's a long tail of relationships. And I could just dissipate my time among all the relationships, but there are two little grandbabies 1.5 miles from here that I just might not engage in at the deepest and most intimate level. And I could trade priceless things for valuable things. I could get on boards and become sloppy busy. I can't tell you how many people I know, they say, well, since I retired, I'm busier than I've ever been. You know what that means? I'm sloppy busy. I probably don't have focus and leverage in my life. The leverage is when you leverage platforms and people and processes that get a multiplier on your time. Sitting on a board is very seldom someone's best contribution. But it's easy. You show up, you don't have to say much, you don't take much risk, and you feel good about yourself. You go back home and have a glass of wine. And toys, like boats. I got rid of our boats and jet skis and sailboats, and we joined the club, a boat club. And then because now the kids come home, and one got 2 kids and they want a pontoon boat. The other one's like wakeboarding, so they want a wakeboard boat. The other one likes sailing, so they want the sailboat. You think about this, and it's not far-fetched. I mean, it could have kept accumulating, and we just got rid of all that. And I'll tell you, what's so nice is I bring a boat back to the boat club. I don't know the name of the boat. I don't even pull the key out. I'd never filled it up. I don't spend Saturdays at the marine store buying parts for my sailboat. I walk away. and I spend the time with the family, on the kids. And who cares what the costs are? But I'm getting my life back. Renovations, I can't tell you how much time people I coach spend renovating houses. Investments, like I said, that Dan Devine's got 114 K1s. I'm looking for evergreen funds now. I don't want to look at all kinds of paperwork. Multiple homes. Now, just think about comfort. I started something called Ardent Mentoring 3 years ago, matching high-capacity leaders with young Christian entrepreneurs. You can check it out at ardentmentoring.org, because so many of the people I coach, they say that what they would love to do in the next season is mentor great young Christian leaders. But when I was thinking about starting that, I almost chickened out because I was afraid to risk my reputation. I was afraid it's hard to do a startup. You got to find people, recruit people, you got to put some cash in, you got to build the systems and processes. And I was so embarrassed at myself that I almost wimped out and took the comfortable road. I went to Boston to speak at MIT last year, and Linda came with me, and it was miserable. It was cold, it was windy, it was miserable. I got on the plane, and I said to her, this is really embarrassing, I am never doing a talk up north again for the rest of my life. And she said, really? Like, are you becoming a wimp? Like, think about, see how it sneaks up on you? Just the comfort. Like, I don't have to do a talk when it's not comfortable. And, you know, you're giving, when you watch your net worth go down. David Weekley told me something very comforting recently. He said that he doesn't like, you know, David Weekley owns, I think, the largest privately home builder in America. They built $4 billion worth of homes last in 2024. And he is given 50% of his time, 50% of his money away every year for the last 25 years. And he said he doesn't like seeing the number go down. So what he does, he has a spreadsheet where he adds his giving to his wealth so that it all adds up to, it's still going up to the right. I mean, a little pathetic, but guess what? It's a great hack. Okay, and complacency. Like, you know, my son-in-law, Chris Pickens, works downtown here, and he walks past the Union Mission on his way to work or somewhere. He sees these men outside in the winter shivering, and kids give out of our giving fund. And so he gave $8,000 recently to the Union Mission. And I'm talking to him, Chris, we're looking for high yield giving. We're looking for like Hope International, where you can get a multiplier, or Edify, or something that's a microfinance. You give $8,000 worth of giving to the Union Mission, buys you $8,000 worth of heating, or it's $1 for $1. There's no multiplier on that. And he's like, Dad, the men are shivering. Do you see what he was teaching me? Dad, your heart is getting complacent. You're turning this into a business of giving, high yield giving. Like, I walk by these guys. Can we just give to these guys that are starving and cold? And isn't that what, you see what he's doing for me? He's helping my hearts to keep from being complacent. So here's what I want to leave you with is, the way through this is to get clear, get free, and get going. And you do this not only iteratively, you do it rhythmically. You do it every year. So the single biggest hack I could encourage you to take is to put a recurring calendar appointment on your calendar early in December, so it happens every year, for an hour or 90 minutes, and just say, update my life plan for next year and share it with my friends and family. And it will force you to get clear on what your mission and metrics are and what your goals are for the next year. And to ask yourself, how do I declutter my life? What's low value that I should be cutting out? And then where could I continue to impose my calling into my calendar in more specific ways? So get clear, get free, and get going. That's what we're wrapping this around. I want to share with you, I know this is pretty detailed and hard to read, but this is my plan. I do this every year. This was 2024. So this is what we do at halftime is every single person that comes through this or the 100X Forum builds a plan like this. So my mission is in the top left, to be a thought leader, enabling high-capacity leaders to leverage their capabilities in partnership with God and advancing his agenda. And then these are the big metrics for my life. If my life turned out perfectly in the middle, you see, I would worship God every day, give liberally, enjoy a few intimate relationships, make a leveraged impact for the Lord as a thought leader, stay in top shape, live surrounded by beauty. This is Linda's dream, to build a thriving family, mentor young moms, building strong marriages and Christian families. And then these were the activities that I was focused on last year, and through God's goodness, we did most of them. But this is the most important slide. This is Jenny and Chris, that live just 2 miles away, giving me feedback. Every year, they give me feedback. She's been doing this since she's 15. She's 32. If you want to teach your kids how to hear the voice of God and follow, take them on the journey with you. You know, if you want your business plan critiqued, go to a private equity guy that critiques 300 business plans every year. And if you want to teach your kids how to be chief life officer, get them to critique your plan every year. And the funny thing is, as she was going through this, and Chris was as well, Linda was sitting beside me in their little townhouse around here, and Linda started speaking up, like, defending me. And finally, Jenny goes, "Mom, stop defending Dad. He's an adult. He asked for our feedback." Now, in case I'm a slow learner, on the back of this sheet, they itemized it in bullet points. It's like he may not, he's kind of a slow learner. So little by little, taking your family on the journey with you to just count on God to compound your results so that one day you look back and you realize, oh my gosh, he's chosen to use me as the soil that produced 100-fold. So this is the verse I want to leave you with. My prayer and our prayer is that the lines of purpose in your life will never go slack. Tightly tied as they are to your future in heaven, kept taut by hope.